Hello again. I trust you are well. I am Peter Kirby, staff writer at Activist Post and author of the book Chemtrails Exposed, a New Manhattan Project. In this video, I will read from my new article titled Textron and the New Manhattan Project. Textron is the latest addition to the long list of organizations heavily implicated in the development and execution of today's New Manhattan Project. The most common thread here, besides weather modification, is the involvement with Germany's former Nazi regime. Textron employed at least 2 former Nazis. How many did they really employ? And what is the true extent of their involvement with the former Nazi regime? Let us begin. Textron Incorporated has serious implications for the development and execution of today's New Manhattan Project. The company's founder was the nephew of Arthur D. Little. Their Bell Aerospace divisions were acquired by a future chairman of the United States Federal Reserve Bank. They have serious connections to former Nazis. Today, Textron trades on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol TXT, and their main business operations are in aerospace and specifically military aerospace, including the production of drone aircraft. To gain the deepest of understandings here, please refer to the new, greatly revised and expanded second edition of the author's book, Chemtrails Exposed, a New Manhattan Project, available exclusively at Amazon. Textron was founded in 1943 by a man named Royal Little. Royal Little was the nephew of Arthur D. Little. Arthur D. Little was the proprietor of the eponymous research corporation Arthur D. Little Incorporated. As readers of this work already know, Arthur D. Little Incorporated sponsored lots of early New Manhattan Project research. Arthur D. Little also staunchly supported and suggested the original name of the Research Corporation for Science Advancement. Arthur D. Little's role in the formation of the Research Corporation for Science Advancement, or RCSA, is significant because it appears that the RCSA has produced much of the basic science that has gone into today's New Manhattan Project, or NMP. Royal Little had been raised almost as a son to Arthur D. Little, and Royal Little served on the Arthur D. Little Incorporated Board of Directors. From early on, Textron was a defense contractor. Their main business was the production of the synthetic fabric rayon, and during World War II they produced rayon parachutes for the Air Force. The name Textron means to connote textiles made from synthetics. Arthur D. Little was one of the chemists that invented rayon. The fact that Textron is a defense contractor from early on is of interest to our investigation because mountains of evidence indicates that the New Manhattan Project has been a Department of Defense production. Although their earliest business operations pertained exclusively to rayon production, Textron was destined to become what we call a conglomerate. A conglomerate was, at the time, a new type of business model that involved the ownership and operation of many very different types of businesses. Around 1950, Textron made its first acquisition, Cleveland Pneumatic Tool Company, the nation's leading manufacturer of aircraft landing struts. From that point forward, Textron acquired scores of companies from many different industries, some of which with relevance to the New Manhattan Project. By 1958, non-textile sales accounted for about 75% of total sales, and by 1960, Textron ranked among Fortune's 100 largest U.S. industrial corporations. It is interesting to note that other conglomerates of the era had pervasive connections to the new Manhattan Project. Litton Industries and Ling Temco Vought were extensively involved in aerospace operations with direct relevance to the NMP. Litton's aerospace operations were eventually acquired by Northrop Grumman, and Ling Temco Vaught's applicable operations ended up as something called L3 Harris Technologies. Aerospace is a field with particular relevance to the new Manhattan Project. This is why Textron's aerospace operations are of particular interest to our investigation. Textron's aerospace operations have also involved former Nazis such as Hans Dolzalek and Walter Dornberger, which makes them even more interesting because former Nazi scientists appear to have played an important role in the production of today's new Manhattan Project. As we have seen, Textron was involved in defense aerospace from the beginning, but it was their 1960 acquisition of Bell Aircraft that brought Textron into the forefront of the industry. They got quite the good deal. Textron paid $32 million for Bell Aircraft's defense business, which included their line of Bell helicopters. At the time of the purchase, Bell's defense business was not seen by many as so incredibly valuable. In 1959, before the acquisition, Bell's defense business had earned after-tax profits of only $1.9 million. But Bell had been acquired for less than its net asset value, and as it turned out, Bell became a major beneficiary of the Kennedy administration's new procurement program. By 1963, it was one of Textron's fastest-growing segments as it brought in $160 million in revenues and doubled pre-acquisition profits. Years after the acquisition, the defense-related businesses acquired from Bell Aircraft frequently earned more annually after taxes than the entire cost of the original acquisition. As of 1979, the sales volume of the defense-related Bell Aircraft operations was 10 times the volume prior to Textron's acquisition. Instrumental in this Bell Aircraft deal was a future chairman of the private U.S. Federal Reserve Bank by the name of George William Miller. Miller was credited with turning Textron into a global conglomerate. He was hired by Little in 1956 as the assistant secretary overseeing acquisitions. By 1960, Miller was the president of Textron, and by 1968, he was Textron's CEO. He aggressively acquired companies and expanded operations to Europe and Asia. In 1974, he became chairman of the Textron board and hosted a Soviet trade delegation at the company headquarters in Providence, Rhode Island. By the mid-1970s, Textron was a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Miller was chairman of the Fed from 1978 to 1979. In 1981, he founded G. William Miller and Company, a Washington investment company he likened to a Swiss-style merchant bank. Now let's get into Textron's Nazis. Walter Dornberger was a senior vice president of the Bell Aerosystems division of the Textron Corporation. Prior to his position at Textron, during World War II, Dornberger was the head of Nazi V-2 rocket development at the Peenemünde slave labor camp. Later in the war, Dornberger also convinced Hitler to build the Nordhausen rocket factory, where at least 20,000 prisoners from the nearby Dora concentration camp were worked to death. After the war, he was initially interred in British POW camps, but in 1947, immediately after his release, he went to work on a classified rocketry program at the then Wright Field near Dayton, Ohio. Today, this installation is known as Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and has a plethora of connections to today's New Manhattan Project. Another of Textron's Nazis is Hans Dolzalek. Dolzalek apparently came to Textron with their 1985 acquisition of something called the Aviation Corporation. Hans Dolzalek is a distinguished German meteorologist who worked for the Wehrmacht Weather Service during World War II. He was also an early member of the Nazi SA Brownshirts. Dolzalek visited America in 1958 in order to attend a major meteorological conference and subsequently accepted a job with Avco, Aviation Corporation, in Wilmington, Massachusetts. In 1985, Avco was acquired by Textron for $2.9 billion. Dolzalek has worked extensively in the vein of the New Manhattan Project. He has done lots of work in the area of atmospheric electricity and artificial ionization. He has also done work for the Office of Naval Research, an organization with strong implications for the development of the NMP. Dolzalek continued his work in atmospheric electricity until at least 1999, when he was a member of the International Commission to NASA's 11th International Conference on Atmospheric Electricity. For the entire backstory here, please refer to the new, greatly revised and expanded second edition of the author's book, Chemtrails Exposed, A New Manhattan Project, available exclusively at Amazon.com. Also, please join my email list at my website, peterakirby.com. Thank you.